speak the truth in love. But I use that line a lot in corporate world, right? Because sometimes you just got to say, this isn't good enough. I like you, I love you, I respect you, but this isn't good enough.
Yeah.
And let's talk about how to make it better. So maybe sometimes you just call it out in a, broadly speaking, loving way.
So you're saying it's not okay for me to say you're getting on my last freaking nerve. Can you stop? We're back with another guest. We've just had so many guests between Soraya and my dog.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to beat Buddy, but
Yeah,
I mean, we've
can't
definitely
compete
got
with
some serious competition today. We've got our
Woof.
friend, Scott
Woof.
Eblin.
Yes.
Yes, our buddy, Scott Eblin. Thank
I
you
respond
for
to
being
snacks.
here. Okay, well,
treats.
You're looking more and more like
yeah.
Buddy by the second.
Indeed.
We're happy that you're here, though.
I am happy to be here.
A long time coming. We've produced
my
a lot of your
producers, yes.
produced a lot of your podcast episodes, and now we get to be on it together.
I'm on your turf.
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
So before we get too deep into this, I do want to take a moment and just give you a shout out. I mean, the best ever podcast. It's been a lot of fun for us to work on it. And
some would say the best ever.
You could say that. Yeah. I mean, I might say that as well.
All
But
in the branding, yeah.
I do want to give you a second to just before we get, because we brought you on here for a purpose, but I do want to give you the floor. I mean, do you want to just like shout out your podcast really quick?
Yeah.
A lot of people like to wait until the end to do that, but I mean, I don't want to bury the lead here.
I believe in eating
people
dessert.
have a lot to learn from.
Eat dessert first.
That way you always have room.
Life is uncertain.
Yeah.
Who knows if we'll make it to the end of the podcast? We better do it now.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And thank you for all the amazing professional help with Best Ever. So it's a show about the connection between managing yourself really, really well, or as well as you can, and the impact that you have as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that the first is the prerequisite to the second, that good leadership really depends on managing yourself effectively. And I've been an executive coach for over 25 years and was an executive myself before that for 10 years. And I've seen that play out over time, and frankly, the older and more experienced I get, the more I believe that's true. It could be that I'm becoming wise in my older age. I don't know. I won't vouch for that, but I think it's really true. And I was thinking about it over the weekend. It's almost like, what is an effective leadership lifestyle? Because the impact of being in a leadership role is big, no matter what kind of leadership role you're in. And I tend to focus on executives and usually senior executives in my work. And those are really high pressure jobs. And you've really got to manage yourself effectively, your stress well, all of that. And so that's what I'm really trying to address in the podcast. I'm looking forward to season 2 with you guys, which we'll talk about and start recording relatively soon in a month or two. And I, in the second season, I really want to get into that even deeper and just share a little bit of what I've learned along the way, along with some interesting guests and what they've learned. And we'll mix it up and chop it up and see what we get.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. And I like your podcast a lot. I've produced a lot of leadership podcasts. And I feel like your podcast is one of the few that I feel like has really told me what to do. Like, okay, I understand if I want to be X, I need to do Y. I think sometimes they're like, and lead. And I'm like,
yeah. That always bugged me. I mean, I wrote a book called The Next Level years ago. It's in its 3rd edition now. And that book is all about what do you need to pick up and what do you need to let go of when you're moving into a bigger leadership role. And I wrote it in part, I wrote about 3 or 4 years after I started coaching, and I'd been corporate before that myself. And I wrote it because I realized that the expectations of new executives are always really high, but they're hardly ever clearly defined. And what I was trying to do in that book, and really what I've tried to do in my work is now on the podcast, is define it. Like, there's some fairly predictable things that you're going to face, and there are some fairly proven things that you can do,
right.
To deal with those predictable things. And so, a lot of the people think like coaching is all about asking questions. If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be?
Oak.
Oak,
Steve Oaks,
yeah, I could
maybe.
see you as an oak.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, it is about asking questions and helping people see their own patterns and all that. But sometimes it's just like, give me an answer,
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm big on that.
there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not over answering, I think.
I think that's so interesting because I mean, I've had plenty of different types of jobs over the years. And one thing that I think is in short supply is training. I think
Yeah.
that a lot of people want people to come into a job. It's the whole 10 years of experience, but you've only been out of school for 5 years, right? And people
Yeah.
want people who are fully prepared to step in action. And I never even considered that being like a problem, even at the top level. So
I think
like,
it is. And, I don't know exactly how you train somebody for those jobs, but I think I view it as what's your learning strategy,
mhm.
because there's a lot to learn, right? And some of that you're just going to have to learn through experience. Some of it you can learn by talking with people who have done it already, and had their own experiences, and you can learn by watching and doing and listening. But it's just trying to approach it in a mindful kind of way, I like to think about mindfulness being about being aware and being intentional and what's going on around me, what's going on inside of me. Now let me make a decision about what's the best thing or not the best thing to do next or not to do next, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Well, I think all of that wonderful expertise is going to lend itself to this topic today, but
Okay.
you don't necessarily have to be a leader, I think, to find relevance in this conversation about insecurity and ego, dealing with
Mhm.
people with insecurity and ego. Maybe if you think you might have it, if you have a case of the ego, who knows? I want to talk a little bit about that topic
Okay.
and how it can affect, I guess, interpersonal relationships and how you can handle it if you encounter somebody who maybe is letting their insecurity or their ego get the best of their interaction.
Yeah. Well, it's a fine line between insecurity and ego. That's the
Mhm.
first thing, right? I mean, it's funny. I brought it the next level a minute ago. The very first line in the very first chapter is insecure people make lousy leaders.
Mm.
So, because
Well.
the first chapter is about picking up confidence in your presence and letting go of doubt and how you contribute. And what I have experienced myself over the years, what I think all leaders experience at some point, what all humans I think experience at different points in their life is doubt and insecurity and feelings of inadequacy, and I'm an imposter. And
I think
yeah.
almost even more so now too, with like younger generations being
Why do you
able.
think?
Comparison is the thief of joy. I feel like is the
Yeah.
quote that always comes to mind. But I think you're so exposed to other people now, being online all the time, that
Yeah.
you have more people to compare yourself to, and therefore end up probably more insecure.
That's so totally true, right?
Thank you.
And to use
I picked up on some things.
yeah, and to use a technical term like about what you're seeing online, all that stuff is bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's people are presenting their best lives, and those aren't even their best lives, right? I mean, I was listening to a Wall Street Journal podcast last night about this guy, Tal Lopez. You guys know who that is?
No.
So Tal Lopez is being sued right now for running a Ponzi scheme.
Nice.
Yeah,
We've talked about
yeah,
Ponzi schemes. We
yeah,
love
yeah.
when people
Yeah.
get into a little
But
bit of
Tal
trouble.
Lopez, his most famous video is "I'm here in my garage. I'm here in my garage with my Lamborghini." And over here, though, I've got 3 bookcases full of books because I'm all about learning.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Right?
He
And
sounds
so
like the coolest guy
yeah,
ever. I
he's
don't
the
see
coolest
what the
guy
problem
ever. I
is.
want to invest $500,000 in his Ponzi scheme. and so that's what, it's all bull. It's all BS.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that everybody in corporate world is all BS. They're not. But I mean, the Instagram stuff, so much of it, the TikTok stuff, whatever, it's, it's not real.
Yeah.
I think it takes a little while to sort of like lock in on that sort of like performative aspect. Cause like, I think that we are becoming more and more used to seeing that online, but I think that a lot of people are taking it, a little bit too seriously and kind of being just that way in their real lives too.
Yeah. How do you see that playing out, Mark?
The way I'm seeing it is just like, I think a lot of people are really aspiring. That's the whole idea to me of this sort of like online content is it's
Everybody
aspirational
wants to
content.
influence somehow.
Exactly.
So they follow other people who do.
Yeah, people see these people online who have what they want, whether that's, the cars, the Lamborghini or whatever. Maybe
The
that's
looks,
the
too.
success.
Yeah.
Maybe they like how these people are just making money, posting stuff on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, I could do that too, right?
Yeah.
I can have that. And I think that it's just, I don't know. It's so I just hate how fake it is. And to see like people who I know like doing stuff like that, it's just, it just gets me. It gets me riled up.
Yeah, me too. It's even happening now on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
That's my least favorite place on the planet.
Yeah,
I believe that's
it's
probably
really
true.
it's wild over there.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just came back from a long time out of the office. I was gone for almost 4 weeks, and the last 2 weeks of the 4, I hardly did anything related to work. Right? I had one client call that I did for an hour, and I put a post up about my birthday handstand on LinkedIn, and that was pretty much the last post I put up for 2 weeks.
Mhm.
The birthday handstand, that's performative, right? I'll acknowledge that.
I think that's worth showing off.
Well, sure.
I think people should feel insecure by seeing that.
Yeah, that was my goal.
Yeah.
Was to make every other executive coach at 65 years of age feel insecure.
Good.
What was interesting about it was, like this morning, I posted sort of a normal LinkedIn post, right? And I immediately noticed that the dopamine thing kicking in, like, okay, is this getting any traction? And after 2 weeks away from that, I realized, oh my God, this thing was stressing me out.
Yeah.
You don't realize how much stress it induces until you stop doing it, and so it's really made me think today, like,
Yeah.
do I really want to get back into this or not? And if I'm going to, what kind of boundaries am I going to put up for myself, really?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of aspirational kind of posting and behavior on LinkedIn. I think my favorite one. Did you guys see the one about like the dog pooped on the carpet? It's a side by side. Your dog pooped on the carpet, and that's just like straight up. Right beside it is they've written the same post in LinkedIn speak.
Oh my God.
And it's about this. It's about 5 paragraphs. 5 paragraphs about what an amazing.
Here's what I learned.
What I learned from my pooping on the carpet experience. Yeah, and
Insane,
it's kind of how it is. It's and like a lot of it comes from insecurity, right?
Yeah.
Or we want to be something bigger. What we are is not enough. So anyway, I'm taking us all over the place. What else?
No, that's totally true. I posted an episode of our podcast before we got here, and I checked. I was like, okay, how's the video starting to do? And like, it is. I think it's fun. I think partially you have to, if you're going to do it, like, be okay with being almost like cringe. Like, I'm putting myself out there. If 500 people view it, cool. Eventually, if I keep doing it enough and more people will get to the point, and everything will be to where, at least right now, I think that continues to grow, but to where I want it to be,
Yeah.
But I think if you obsess, you're so right, over like the numbers and what you're seeing, it is really stressful. And it does feel like, well, why are these people getting these views and I'm not? Is there something wrong with me, which sucks.
Yeah, it's really easy to get attached to outcomes that we can't fully control.
Yeah. Well, you have to, I feel like, focus on the input too. Like, why am I doing this? Is it because I want a bajillion people to see it? Or is it fun for me to post an hour-long video of Mark and I trying to guess what's real and what's AI? What's the point?
Totally right.
Yeah.
Because you're having fun with it, right?
Yeah, we did have a lot of fun with it.
I mean, back to LinkedIn, one of my best performing posts in the last couple of years was right at the end of the Winter Olympics. And Alyssa Liu, won the gold medal for figure skating. And, did you guys see her performance?
Oh, I watched
awesome.
it several times.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's just,
there's so much joy in it.
She was filled with joy, and you feel filled by joy just watching it because you just know that's where she is. And I contrasted her in that post with Ilya Malikin, the quad god guy, right? He was fantastic, right?
Yeah.
He won the Worlds, but he had a terrible gold medal skate, right? Final skate in the Olympics. And you could just see him melting almost on the ice, and he said afterward, when I got out on the ice, every trauma I'd ever had in my life just got flooding back into my mind.
Ugh, I don't even want to think about what that must feel like.
Exactly. And she, on the other hand, who was as a 13-year-old, was like this phenomenal skater, but she was the classic 13, 14-year-old Olympian who just
Burned
was
out
wound,
early.
so tightly wound and just so overcoached and all this stuff. And she quit, right? I mean, she quit for a couple of years. And then when I'm coming back, I'm doing this for me. You know, I'm doing this for me because I like it and because I love it. And if I get a gold, great. If I don't get a gold, great. I'm doing it because I love it, you know, and that's, you know, it's funny. You talk about insecurity. That's somebody who is completely, seemingly,
Secure.
you never know, but completely secure in herself right now, right? And look at the work she had to do that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm interested because, I mean, if we're going to talk about the Winter Olympics, the other thing that kind of stood out for me in that point was Lindsey Vonn, obviously.
Yeah,
who,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Like, I remember watching her skate when I lived out in or ski, rather.
Yeah.
I watched her ski.
Skates as well.
Yeah. But like so I lived in Beaver Creek, Colorado for a little while, and I watched her do like the Birds of Prey run
in person.
Yeah, in person. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But then like seeing her have that like awful crash at the Olympics was just really, really shocking. And so like to me, I'm wondering, is that sort of like the antithesis? Because you had said like insecurity and ego, obviously like two different things. So like, I guess before we get into that, like what is the differentiator there? And then tell me a little bit about maybe like, is that the sort of thing where like, do you think that that decision, because like, yeah, exactly. To me, it's like, you know, I felt so bad about that because apparently she had like an injury going into the Olympics, but she felt like obligated to like go
to do it
and compete.
Yeah.
And this is somebody who had like so many like medals and accolades, like an extremely well accomplished athlete, you know.
But you just like keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun. Yeah, she programmed herself, you know, to do that, right? I mean, that's her whole life. It's funny, I've been working on, and don't know if it's going to happen or not, but I've been working on a TED Talk application or a TEDx application. And the theme of this particular TEDx event is going to be the courage to pay attention. And so part of my take on that begins with the fact that I self-identify as a runner, right? And the thing about being a runner, at least the way I learned to be a runner, is you ignore the pain. You know, if you're going to go on a 10-mile run, you're going to finish that freaking 10-mile run, because even if at mile 8 or 7 or whatever, you're in enormous pain and you can't remember why you're doing it, there was a reason you started that run, and you're going to finish that freaking run, right?
This is so funny that you say that.
Why?
I hurt my knee running last week, and I kept running.
You kept
and
running?
It still hurt, and I've got a brace on, and I've had to take the last 3 days off. So this feels very real.
Yeah, completely, right? And so that's a very linear, and you ignore what's going on, right? Because you've trained yourself to do that. In matter of fact, you probably take pride in that. Weren't you proud of yourself for finishing that run with the bad knee?
I think I was glad that I had finished what I set out to do. I think that's always ultimately been my goal with running.
That's
I don't think
exactly
I don't consider myself a runner because I'm not particularly fast, and I don't really do it like racing. I'm just out there.
Me either.
Running around having a good time.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, good. I set out to do this amount of time. I did that amount regardless. And now I'm paying for it on the back end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then in 2009, my legs feel like lead for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, my calves especially, and think, what's going on with this? And so this is back in the day of WebMD. You know, everybody's self-diagnosing themselves on WebMD, but before AI or any of that stuff. And so
I think AI is taken away from us.
Yeah. WebMD is another business that AI is going to kill.
Yeah.
Or already has. So my WebMD self-diagnosis as a good type A was lumbar stenosis, which is a pinched nerve in your spine caused by a little thing that's going on in your spinal cord. And so I made myself an appointment with a physiatrist, which is kind of the combination between orthopedics and neurology. And I walk into the office and I say to her, I'm pretty sure I have lumbar stenosis. I just need you to tell me what to do to fix it. And she said, well, great. Thanks for the help. But
I'm going to do the doctor thing now.
Yeah, I'm going to do the doctor thing now. And why don't we run some MRIs and see what's going on? Well, the MRIs and then a subsequent spinal tap showed that I had multiple sclerosis, right? And so it was like so amazing because my decline was immediately downhill. As soon as I'm like walking across the parking lot to go back for the second visit to get the results from the MRI, I literally couldn't feel my feet on the ground because my nervous system wasn't working the right way.
Yeah.
And it just got shitty in an amazing amount of short time. And long story short, what helped me get out of that whole situation was not running anymore because I couldn't really run. I do a little bit now, but not like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And getting into yoga, right? Because my wife had a friend who was a health expert and a yoga teacher, and he should do yoga. I have great experience with people with Parkinson's and MS with that, and he should try it. And so the teacher said to me, if you come here 3 days a week, you're going to have a better body. If you come here more than 3 days a week, you're going to have a better life. Started going more than 3 days a week, and it got me out of that linear, got to finish it no matter what
Right.
kind of mindset into more of a, yoga kind of works in all planes of motion, not just the
Front and
forward,
back.
front to back.
Yeah.
It's all planes. And that's kind of a good metaphor, really, just for how to look at things, right? So, God bless Lindsey Vonn. I mean, she's amazing.
Absolutely.
Who am I to question a champion like that? But you can get so linearly focused on this thing that you don't pay attention to what else
Right.
is around you and what your response might need to be.
So it sounds like personally for insecurity, it's kind of remind yourself what you're doing, why you're doing it, what your goal is. And then for ego, it's like look around you and focus in on what the purpose is there too. A lot of this seems to deal with purpose. Like what's the purpose and not so much like what do you look like doing it almost.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, what are you
Yeah.
in it for, right?
Right.
And I would, on the ego thing, I think everybody has ego.
Oh yeah.
At,
sure.
at some level, we all have an ego.
I think when I say it, I mean unhealthy levels of
unhealthy, like
ego.
narcissism, or what are you
Yeah,
thinking?
almost like, or just like self-assurance to like a toxic degree, like overconfidence almost. Like when I think
Yeah.
about somebody with an ego, I don't think about it as a good thing.
Yeah. You guys ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
I feel like I have heard you tell me about the Dunning-Kruger effect and I don't remember
So
it.
the
please.
Dunning-Kruger effect is this psychological phenomenon where you believe you're an expert in something that you have no expertise in whatsoever.
Yes.
Right? And we see that a lot in public life these days, in
Yes.
a few particular instances, particularly. I mean, that's ego run amok, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe it's insecurity masquerading or manifesting as ego,
Mhm.
because I do think most, like I said in the book, insecure people make lousy leaders because insecure leaders do weird things.
Right.
And they act out and, they start replaying scripts from their childhood, they, reacting to the way their parents parented them or whatever it might be. And it's usually not, it's a reaction rather than a response. It's a reflexive kind of reaction. There's no gap between the stimulus and the action.
So how do you not react then? Like how do you manage that
I think
if you're
the
in that
first
scenario?
Well, okay. First of all, I'm not a psychologist.
Dr. Eblin, please.
Yeah.
Pull up 5&D, somebody.
But I think, I always say the biggest thing I do for my clients in coaching is I give them space to think out loud. And part of thinking out loud is observing your patterns, talking about the patterns you see in your environment, the way you're interacting, the patterns of the way you interact. Is that helpful? Is it not helpful? If it's not helpful, what do you need to adjust? Blah, blah, blah. And so I think noticing is the first thing, it's like noticing the patterns.
Self-awareness.
Awareness,
Good place to
externally and
start,
internally, right? And then it's back to my mindfulness definition, choosing a response, and I'm sure I've talked about this with you guys because I always talk about it. It's Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor, who wrote, the book everybody should read, Man's Search for Meaning. And, he's paraphrasing, he says, the whole key is to lengthen the gap between the stimulus and the response, to give yourself time to observe, to think, to consider what's best, right?
Mhm.
It's funny, I was talking to a guy at the meeting I was at earlier before I came here, and he is a financial advisor. He used to be an attorney, and he was only an attorney for 13 months. And I said, that's a really specific amount of time to know
Yes.
that you were an attorney. How did you know it was 13 months? So was there a precipitating event that caused you? He said, yeah, I was kind of a jerk, and I was a smart ass. And I was at Thanksgiving dinner with my family, and I was just like taking shots throughout the entire dinner for no good reason at all. And then a month or two later, when I got fired, I realized I was doing the same thing in my law firm
Dang.
as an associate, right? And so we talked about that. Like, why are you doing, why do we do that? I wrote a blog post years ago called "Let Me Entertain Me," not let me entertain you, but let me entertain me. And it was all about being a smartass, and because I'm a recovering smartass, still am, you know. And why do I do that? Why did I do that a lot more than I used to? Because I don't know. I'm bored. Because I'm not comfortable. I'm insecure with the situation, and I'm just going to redirect the energy away.
Like you can control where it goes.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly. And it's being not secure enough to just shut up, and so insecure that I've got to take it over.
I feel like that should be on like a sticker somewhere.
Really? What's wrong?
Not insecure enough to not shut up or whatever it is.
To be secure enough to shut up, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, be secure enough to shut up.
Enough to shut up.
Yeah, that would.
You can buy that sticker.
That should be some merch for you guys. Mainstream merch. Yeah.
Ironic for a podcast company. We're trying.
It would be,
encourage
wouldn't
people to
it? It
keep
wouldn't be much of a
talking.
podcast if you just all shut
Well,
up.
no, I mean, I think the important thing is listening too, right?
That is true. That was actually one of my pet peeves on another podcast. They asked what our podcast pet peeve was, and I was like, not listening to the person that you're having on your show. Like, and I think that's a lot of the reason people hate podcasts too. Is like the host is there to just like host, and they don't listen to anything the guest is saying. It's like, why did you invite them if you're not going to let them talk?
Yeah.
Well, I got to know, Scott, because I'm really interested in this whole side of self-management, and I think it's really cool. And you're always so good on your podcast about giving out these like really actionable insights. We kind of talked about that earlier. You're giving the roadmap to people. I know that I can think of at least 2 or 3 people who listen to our podcast who are like college students, right? Like freshmen in college.
Awesome.
And so I would love to hear from you. Like, do you have any like really actionable tips for like someone like that who's kind of like starting that new phase of their life, who is really trying to like, excel, obviously like get good grades, have a good social life and all that sort of stuff. But, like it's so much change and so quickly in your life. Like, I mean, whether it's specifically for that demographic or for somebody just in a similar situation, what would be like 1 or 2 like quick tips for just like sort of getting yourself in order so that you can tackle all these things that you got on your to-do list?
Wow, that's a fantastic question, and one that I will have to vamp until I come up with an answer. Here's the reason why I don't feel immediately comfortable answering the question. I don't have that much interaction with college students these days.
Totally fair.
And at the same time, from everything that I do think I know, frankly, I would not want to be a college student right now, because I think it is a hell of a tough time to figure it out.
Absolutely.
With AI. Again, just the meeting I just came from, somebody was talking about I don't know if you're seeing this, Cee Cee, with your work at law school, but the graduating class at Duke Law right now, this is the first graduating class where they've had AI all the way through. Are you guys dealing with that?
Yeah, there are lots of people who have started using it quite frequently.
Well,
I use it some, but
and apparently at Duke, like they're encouraging it. They're building it into the curriculum. And what happens to first year associates or first year financial analyst in an investment bank or whatever it might be, when the grunt work that I did when I was a first year analyst in an investment bank a million years ago, 6 months worth of grunt work can be done in 60 minutes, probably by AI at this point. And do you even need the first year analyst or the first year associate?
And that goes back to Mark's thing about how can you have enough experience when like you can't get the experience.
Yeah. So I'm going to borrow my advice because I thought this was really interesting. And I don't know how, I'd love to get your guys' opinion on how useful this is. There's a reporter for the New York Times named Jodi Kantor. She was one of the 2 reporters that broke the Me Too story back in 2018 or 19. She was asked to give the commencement address at Columbia University a couple of years ago. And she really, really thought about what she wanted to say and what she wanted to share. She's got college-ish age kids herself. And she's now written a book, based on kind of the book-length treatment of her commencement address. And she says there's 2 things that she thinks are really important right now. And I can't remember what the second one is, but the first one was to develop a craft, to And so what do you think what does that mean to you guys? You both nodded like you understood what that means. What does that mean to you to develop a craft at whatever age you guys are, 20 something?
To me, it says like find something that you care about, learn about it, know it, do it, whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
pick something that is like joyful and something that you can do, I guess. That's kind of what that says to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it a lot in terms of like, being like a craftsman, craftsperson or something like that, where it's like having a job is kind of, or like it's about understanding like what kind of value you're producing. And, there's a lot of different ways to like make, stuff. And I think that that's something that in this new age of AI, I think a lot of people are still trying to figure that out, right? We were talking just last week about like, if you're using AI to make art, are you an artist, right? Well, I mean, I think those kinds of questions are still up in the air. But for something like this, where it's like, if we're trying to find your craft, I think it is part passion and part work. You find something that you want to do and figure out how to
The
do
passion.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of what she was talking about on the interview. I heard her where she was talking about the book. I guess so. I like craft. Seems like all three of us like craft. We're pro craft.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good to know. I think and I've been thinking about this a lot. I went to Davidson College for undergrad, and again, a long time ago. But what Davidson teaches you, and I think it still does teach you this, is critical thinking skills, right? And how to look at a situation and break it down and apply some judgment to it, how to go out and do some research. AI can do the research for you in a second now, but is it the right answer? We don't really know. And so what kind of level of discernment are you developing over the years to unpack it? And it's like, let's say your craft is related to coding or computer science or whatever, and you can vibe code your ass off on Claude, right? I think, 10 years from now, we're going to have a real cluster F with this stuff when there's all this code out there that nobody understands what's underneath it because it was all vibe coded by Claude. And so at that point, we're going to need people who understand how do you unpack all this stuff. And what questions do we need to be asking? What do we need to be looking at? How do we think about it? I have no idea in that particular instance, but I'm pretty confident it's going to require a level of critical thinking skills. And I guess that would be one piece of advice I'd have to anybody, no matter what major you have or what you think you want your career path to be, it's almost certainly going to be different 10 years from now than it is today, or even 5 years from now. So you better know how to pivot, and you better know how to think critically. I used the term learning strategy a little while ago, to keep learning. And that's the other thing Davidson taught me. You should be a lifelong learner. Yay, liberal arts, basically.
I mean, I think a lot of people would describe, undergrad especially is more just about learning how to learn as like,
It should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think quite often, though, my uninformed impression is that it's been focused on teaching skills around a trade rather than a craft, perhaps, or a profession rather than a craft, and less about what's the durability of that skill set. And if it's not that durable, what do you do next? How do you reorient yourself?
Yeah, I think Carolina, that's where we both went, did a decent job. I think in the beginning, when you're taking like your first couple classes, you learn how to learn, but I think it quickly becomes the skills that you need
to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, is it really?
Yeah, I think because I was in the journalism school. So my last 2 years, I had a couple of professors that I think made me think critically, which I appreciate them for. That's something that I've been talking about. I feel like every other episode is I think we should all think more critically and deeply and generally, but that seems to be.
So what's your advice to somebody in your cohort to get better at that? How do you get better at critical thinking from your point of view?
I think
practice.
Yeah, practice.
Well, what are you practicing?
But I also think like to use your example with AI, at Central, they have talked about it, and we have access to certain like legal AI tools that we can use for different things. But I wouldn't say that they're encouraging the constant use of it. And I think the way that I have been able to be successful is to first try to take the material and learn it for myself. From the book, from a specific resource, from something. Like, I'm taking the notes, I'm trying to learn the information, I'm putting it all together. Versus you see some people who skip that step almost entirely and just like put a transcript into Claude and like, move from that.
Yeah.
Which if that works for them, that works for them. Like, I'm not going to be judgmental about it. But I think there's a value to forcing yourself to do the hard thing that takes longer of like, I'm going to sit here and see if I can figure it out before I ask the machine to figure it out.
Yeah, totally. And that's why you won 2 book awards last year at your law school.
Because I'm thinking critically.
You did the
I
work.
told you people that it works.
Yeah.
And it does.
See? You know whereof you speak.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is thinking and questioning things too. I feel like people don't question things as much anymore. Like people see things, especially online, especially also based on the episode that we put out today about guessing if something's real or AI, which we were horrible at. Like people don't question things or see something and they're like, oh, that's real. It's like, are we sure? Or see something happening. Why does that happen? We just like move so fast that nobody's taking a second and be like, let me just use my brain.
I had this economics professor at Davidson, Cora Louise Nelson, Dr.
I like that name. Very pretty.
Yeah. She was an institution there, and she'd been on the faculty. She's the first woman faculty member ever at when she started with an all-male college, right?
Icon.
Yeah, exactly. And she was tough as nails. And if you did the work, she loved you. If you didn't do the work, she had no time for you. And I did the work. And she used to talk about exam day at Davidson. And the main building back then was a big academic building called Chambers. And she would talk about standing at her window at her office in Chambers, watching students walk across the quad from their dorms for their exams. Some of them would walk, she had this very like stentorian kind of voice. Some of them would walk as very straight and very still, as if they moved their head in one direction or another, the knowledge would fall out of their ears.
I love that.
Because those were the students who had crammed.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the 2026 analog to that is AI. You know, if you get AI to answer it for you, you haven't learned a damn thing.
No.
Right.
Right.
I think learning is a fun part.
And it's not going to stick with you.
Yeah.
Right. But you did the work. It should make you feel very secure. Back to the main theme. You did the work.
Right.
And you won book awards.
I think that was a really interesting thing that you just said, though, Cee Cee. Learning it is the fun part. And that was something I was going to say is just like, you know, I think if you really want to like practice those critical thinking skills, it's like you got to find the thing that makes you enjoy learning, you know, like when I'm thinking about just like the things I like to do in my spare time, you know, whether it's like miniature painting. When I got into that, I spent like all of my time like watching videos, like what is this technique? You're talking about thinning your paints. How do I do that? Literally just like putting water on it? Why is thick paint bad? You just like...
Why is thick paint bad?
Well, it's just goopy and clumpy, you know? No, you want to get a nice smooth finish, right? You don't want it to look like it's painted. You want it to look like it's the thing it is,
just that
right?
color.
Exactly.
That's a craft.
Exactly.
You were describing learning a craft.
But I think the same
You were
thing-
describing learning the craft of law.
Precisely.
Yes.
It's a craft. So thank you, Jody Cantor. I think she had it right.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that would be the advice for younger people, though, in college, is like learning is the fun part. And if you feel like what you're learning is not fun for you, you're probably not going to want to do it for the rest of your life. You can always pick something else.
Yeah. I've read this story the other day about a guy, his job is to travel around the country going to bars that serve Guinness and making sure they know how to pull a pint of Guinness the proper way.
Nice.
Yeah, he is the Guinness pint
That sounds
instructor.
like a fun job.
It is an amazing job. You know what?
Somebody's got to do it.
So he has developed that as his craft, right?
Uh-huh.
Prior to that, he was the PA announcer for the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, this guy's had this. I
Whatever
mean,
you want.
this guy's had this. He's like 40 years old. He's already had 2 amazing careers. You know, Baltimore Orioles PA announcer and Guinness pint pulling expert. I love that.
Yeah. I think we've learned a lot in this episode so far about how to not be insecure or have a huge ego. But what if somebody around you just like doesn't want to do the work and you're stuck with them and you feel like you're suffering and they're not changing? What can you do? in that scenario. I'm not saying that I know anybody like that, but
yeah. Your partner.
they're out there, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Golly, you guys ask the hard questions. I mean, the first phrase that came to mind, and you said that, is speak the truth in love.
Mm.
And allegedly, I think that might come from the Apostle Paul, not quite sure. But I use that line a lot in corporate world, right? Because sometimes you just got to say, this isn't good enough, and I like you, I love you, I respect you, but this isn't good enough.
Yeah.
And let's talk about how to make it better. So maybe sometimes you just call it out in a, broadly speaking, loving way.
So you're saying it's not okay for me to say you're getting on my last freaking nerve. Can you stop? That's probably not polite.
That's maybe not.
Well, with peace and love, you're getting on my last nerve, right?
Maybe after you've done the loving thing twice,
Right.
the third time you could say, enough of this bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I do know that you've said not to do feedback sandwich, which drives that whole thing has always driven me crazy. And I was like, why do people keep telling people to do this?
Explain to the audience what a feedback sandwich
yes,
is,
sir.
please.
It is like when you tell somebody something like nice and like fluffy, like you are so wonderful and talented. This thing that you made sucks, but you look really good today. Why are we doing this?
Right.
And here's the thing. I also hate the feedback sandwich. And I'm somebody who likes to give positive feedback is the thing. I really like to try and lift people up. But here's the thing is like, unless it's like a feedback sandwich is easy if somebody has done a lot of things really, really well. And there's like one thing you want to see different, because then you can just do it just like that, right? You can give them a lot of good stuff up front, give them the hard stuff in the middle, and then give them some more good stuff. But if it's like, it's really only the bad thing that stood out, you're trying to have to like grasp.
You're really looking for those 2 pieces of bread.
Exactly. They're in the bag somewhere. They're kind of moldy, and it's just
and they're the ends.
Nobody wants to eat
They're
that
the
sandwich.
butts of it.
The crust.
Yeah, I hate the crust.
Yeah.
Or the heels. The heels of the bread. Never good
Yeah.
for a sandwich.
No.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind on that one is XY graph. Skill on one axis, will on the other axis. And there's a really old classic book called The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard, where he unpacks a theory called situational leadership. And his point is you have to, as a leader, adjust your engagement approach to where somebody is on that graph. Are they high skill, high will? Great. Leave them alone. They're going to do a great job, right? Because they're just self-motivated and got the skill set. Go. Are they high skill and low will? Okay, well, now we've got to deal with their motivation and tune into what's up with that. And how can I help them see a bigger purpose, feel connected to the purpose, whatever it might be. Are they low skill, high will? Like they're really excited and enthusiastic, but they're just not good at this? Well, then that's to use your word, it's a training issue, right? And how can we unpack that to give you a good learning path? If they're low skill, low will, then how much do you want to invest, right?
Yeah.
Because they're probably not going to go much of anywhere anytime soon, and you probably can't fix them.
Yeah.
So then that's when you move on.
Hopefully they can find a spot where they can find work where they find a better spot on the graph than at the very bottom corner.
I used to have a pastor back in my church days who talked about his bishop when they had a minister in the Methodist conference, who just wasn't getting it done, the bishop would call that person in and say, we're going to help you find God's next opportunity for you.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And they frame it as an opportunity. God's got an opportunity in mind for you. So
I love when phrases like that. When
spin is a wonderful thing.
I
love
do.
It.
It's
What's
like
that?
Spin is a wonderful thing. I love it.
Maybe it's kind of a little heinous, like you're out of here. But this next opportunity, I think that's so funny.
Well, and it kind of is, honestly, because sometimes, honestly, I know you're talking about. Are you thinking from the boss, or are you thinking from a coworker standpoint when you ask that question?
Which question?
The one about what do you do when somebody's not getting it done?
Oh, I'm thinking, I would say, just from an interpersonal perspective, it could be a coworker. I think to a boss, or from a boss's perspective, I think it's easier because you have that framework that I'm I'm
You have to
leadership
listen to
on the
something.
ladder. Yeah, at that
exactly.
point. But I think from a coworker or like interpersonal relationship when you both are inherently on the same level, it's like,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah. That's harder sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because you still got to live with that person
Yes.
for whatever
theory.
duration.
Exactly.
Unless you fire them
Yeah.
interpersonally.
Well, yeah, maybe you
Which
do,
can be done,
and it's
yeah.
just like, how much do you want to keep investing your energy in that,
Mhm.
right? So,
But I feel like a lot of times too, the next opportunity, whenever somebody says, we're going to present you with your next opportunity from God or Jesus or whatever it is that you said, sometimes the next opportunity really is better than you thought it
well,
would be.
it totally
Absolutely.
is.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think it's easy, at least as a manager or a boss, to fall into a parent-child kind of dynamic where you're the parent and they're the child, and that's never good, because you want adult to adult. You know, let's talk about what's working, what's not working. And sometimes the best thing you can, and I've learned this through life experience, sometimes the best thing you can do is let somebody go
Yeah.
because they're just not suited. The job doesn't suit them, or they don't suit the job, or both. And then they go on and do the next thing, which may be completely different, and they end up having a great life.
Mhm.
You know, and because I treated them, if I treat them as parent-child, and I don't tell them the truth, and I don't try to redirect them or help them or anything like that, then they spend 10 more years sucking at what they do, and probably
Because they're your kids and you have to put up
exactly,
with them
and
regardless.
probably hating their life.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's just good. You got to be honest.
Well, it is hard to let
In
things
love.
go from time to time, but we do have to, kind of wrap this
great
one up.
segue. I saw that coming from about 10 miles away.
I do want to give you one last opportunity here, though, Scott. Like, obviously, we talked about a lot. We covered a lot of
We
ground
did
here.
too
Was
much.
there anything else on your mind as we're wrapping up?
I feel like I've talked too much, and I don't feel like we really addressed your question about insecurity and ego, because
think
I kept taking you all over the map.
I think we got to it. I think we got around it. Most importantly, I think we've learned that whatever you do, it has to start with being secure in yourself and listening to your intuition.
I like that. I like the way you said it.
Synthesize it.
And I was going to ask you, Cee Cee, what's your biggest takeaway? You just said it.
Yes.
Mark,
yes.
what's your biggest takeaway?
I think my biggest takeaway is the thought about the craft, kind of combining that with the idea of like the whole XY graph, like the skill and the will, kind of thinking about like the craft is the thing that really like pushes both of those things forward. Like if you want like a linear progression up the graph or like an exponential, push up the graph, like that is the sort of like key factor to me. That's the thing that makes it all happen, right?
I love the way you said that. And the nice joining of different ideas in the moment, Mark. Excellent. Well
Thank
done.
you. See, just
I
one
do what I can.
compliment, not a terrible thing about us in the middle.
Yeah.
Just one.
The other thing I learned is that it's not even really something I learned. It's something I knew. It's just we could talk with you for a long time, man. We always have a good time with
It's
you.
fun that we got to have one that wasn't like us going over on a meeting for like 15 minutes. Like we actually got to just hang out and have a
I appreciate the opportunity
It's on the schedule. Yes,
and the
you'll have to come
invitation.
back.
Thank you, guys.
We'll have to have you as a consult, interpersonal relationship consult. Whenever we have something going on, we'll bring you back,
You've got my
Dr.
number.
Eblin.
Yes.
Yes. That's it for this dive. Thanks for being here. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at wavestream.media. And if you want a podcast like this one or totally not like this one, visit our website, wavestream.media. See you soon.